Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic, Keys of My Success. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman, and I am super excited to share this episode with you. The reason I am so excited about this particular episode is because in 2025, I had the opportunity to sit down and interview 50 of the most successful chiropractors that I could find literally around the world. And as we sat down together, most of them by phone, I asked them, what are your 3 keys of success that have made your practice and you so incredibly successful for the years that you have been in practice? And some of those doctors have been in practice for less than 5 years, and others for more than 40 or 50. And on this episode, we're going to talk about exactly what they said and compile the results of these 50 highly successful chiropractors to give you the golden nuggets all in one fell swoop of an episode. Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. So as I said in the introduction, for all of last year, week by week, I interviewed doctors and successful business people, asking them what are their 3 keys of success, things that have made them so highly successful. And every one of those episodes was just golden and masterful, what each of these highly successful people have created for themselves, for their business, for their family, for their legacies. And now, on this episode, I took the time to go back through each one of those interviews with the copious notes that I had taken during the interview process and written down each of their 3 keys of success and then compiled them into different groups and categories where it made sense to combine them. And what I've come up with, what I have found, is there are 12 different categories. And what I'm about to present here, I don't believe has ever been done in the chiropractic profession. I'm going to reveal the key ingredients of success that these doctors have said in reverse order. So while they're all incredibly important, the very first one that I present will be the one that the fewest said, building up to the biggest and most important, arguably, at the very end. So let's get started. When speaking to these doctors, the thing that several doctors said, but not many, was that you need to have clean systems and procedures in your office. What a very left-brain concept, very dry, very static. And by the way, it is absolutely true. Our systems and procedures do need to be clean and do need to be efficient. And everybody should have that absolutely positively. And while it's incredibly important, it turns out those are not the biggest keys of success based on these 50 doctors that I've spoken to. Well, what's next? The next one that popped up is your statistics. You have to know your statistics to know what the practice is doing so you know how to manage the practice. And again, that's incredibly important. And it's very left-brained. It's very dry. It's mathematics. There's no emotion there. It just is what it is. The next one I found very interesting. A group of doctors said, the people you surround yourself with, primarily your spouse, your husband or wife, because those people love you and support you, and ultimately, with their love and support, you can then move out of your comfort zone to do what needs to be done. but their love and support, marrying the right person, specifically, were the words that kept coming up over and over again. The next one on the list, 7 of the doctors that I spoke to, 7 of the 50, said communication is one of their keys of success. You have to be able to communicate effectively with your patients about what you're doing, why you're doing, why it's so important, where they are in their care, what care they're receiving. Your communication is a very important key. But arguably, based on these 50 docs, it's not one of the most important, but it is important. What's the next one on the list? Building your team. So the team of people that you have in the office, your staff, and building them up to be the best they can be, ranked high on the list. I heard that 8 different times from these 50 docs, that was really important, because if your team is not really on board with what you're doing and providing, then they're not really helping you get where it is you're trying to go and grow. So in a 3-way tie, with building the team being one of those 3, was for you, the doctor, to be curious and to be a learner, to constantly be in that mode of curiosity and learning techniques, learning new things for the office, learning about your patients, being curious what they're into, what they're about, having curiosity as one of your key traits. 8 of those doctors said that that's what has helped propel them to be hugely successful. And also tied with those 2, building the team and being a curious learner, was to be sure to have coaches and mentors. Now, personally, I think that's even more important, but when you hear the other ones, it'll make sense why coach and mentor fell in the middle like this. When you have coaches and mentors, they can show you and help guide you along this path of success. But enough about that. Let's move on. 12 of the doctors told me that you have to care. You have to provide PTC, present time consciousness, when you're with your patients. You have to have an intention for that patient, be right there with them, and be providing service of value. You have to be providing that service and care because your patients know it. And next on the list, 15 of the doctors said relationships, building those relationships. But you as a person, expressing honesty, kindness, being trustworthy, being authentic, doing the right thing, doing what God would want you to do, following your gut. It's all about your personal integrity. And personal integrity is incredibly important to these 50 doctors. And if they're highly successful, I think that's worth listening to. So that's the first 9 of the 12 characteristics that are important. And while all of those are important, it's interesting to look at it statistically, because even this last one that I just went over, only 30% of the doctors mentioned that specific one. All the ones prior to that was less than 30%. Now's where it starts to get really interesting, because we're down to the last 3. These last 3, more than 30% of the doctors all identified these as the key things that help them to propel them to be the huge successes that they have become and continue to be. So we're going to spend more time digging into each one of these one at a time. All right, so here we go. The third most frequent thing that these highly successful people said is to build you as a person, to build themselves as a person. Their headspace, sometimes it's called. Years ago, my mentor, Dr. Larry Markson, famously said, it's your job to constantly build yourself up in strong and noble thought. And doesn't that speak volumes? Tony Robbins famously said, you are the gatekeeper of your own mind, because the world is happy to fill your mind with a lot of crap. Now, I'm paraphrasing him. I don't know that he used the word crap, but the idea here is if you don't build you up, who do you think is going to do it for you? How happy is the world to tear you down one brick at a time? There's lots of people out there who are jealous. They have thoughts that they think that you're not doing things right. When you know you're doing things right the way they should be doing for the right reasons, with integrity, as we said before, you're building you up. You know you're doing the best you can. You're being the best version of you that you can be. Yeah, that's important. It's psychological, it's physical. Obviously, that rolls over then into emotional. When you show up big, when you play the best game you can, when you're playing all out, when you're doing everything you can for your patients, when you're doing everything you can to build your practice, when you're being the best husband or wife or spouse, you're being the best parent you can be, the best friend you can be, you're stepping up. You're making a bigger difference in the world, and it really does matter. That's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of all of these doctors and business people that I got to speak to over the past year. You're welcome to go back and listen to all 50 of those episodes and hear what they had to say individually. But you building up you, how do you do that? It's by the books that you read. It's the conversations that you're having with people. And within those conversations, what are you talking about? The great philosopher and teacher Socrates famously said that strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and weak minds discuss people. So let's look at that in reverse order. Don't be talking about people. Don't be discussing the events. Well, that's better than talking about people. But ideas for growth, ideas for expansion, ideas for improvement. That's what strong minds talk about and focus on. And when we do that, you get to change the world, your world, for the better. But it's not just in the books that you read and the people that you talk to, the conversations that you're having. It's other things that you're doing in your world as well. What movies are you watching? Are you spending time as a gamer or in this virtual reality world? What are you really working on and focusing on and building? As chiropractic physicians, we completely understand the current ideas of neuroplasticity. The areas of the brain that you use more grow more. So in what direction are you choosing to grow and motivate and move your brain towards? That doesn't mean you can't sit down and watch a sitcom or a romantic comedy movie. You know what? That's bubblegum for the brain, and that's terrific. But are you also watching documentaries, learning new things, learning new ways of looking at things, being curious? Oh, there it is. That comes up again. Being curious and learning things about the world that you didn't know before. And I could go on and on about this, but I won't belabor the point now. Again, if you'd like to discuss this further, if you'd like some other ideas of how to step up to build a better version of you, you're welcome to reach out via the website. We can have a conversation about it, whether it's via email or by the phone. Happy to do that also. But that brings us down now to the final two. The big two that most of the doctors and business people that I spoke to said as these are their keys of success. These things came up more often than anything else. So in second place, the one that shouldn't surprise anybody, but yet people who aren't as successful as they want to be just somehow can't seem to do this, they said, do the work. Roll up your sleeves and do the effing work. And excuse my language there. It's consistent action and determination that gets it done. People who aren't successful yet, who aren't as successful as they want to be, just frankly aren't willing to do the work yet. For some reason, they're just not doing it. And that's why it doesn't get done. You look at anybody, and this goes beyond some of the people that I have interviewed, who has become highly successful, they just can't be stopped. They just keep working. Look at the richest human being on the planet. Last I checked, it was Elon Musk. Look at his work ethic. You may or may not like the products that he has produced. You may or may not like the way that he lives his life. You may or may not like some of the philosophies that he expounds, but you can't argue with his work ethic. What he decides to take on, he just gets done. There's an old saying, what do winners do? They win. Okay, why? Because they just don't give up. One of the most successful doctors that I know, and he was a guest on the podcast in 2025, he was trying to get to a seminar. The airplane that he was on got detoured to a city that was 5 hours away from where the seminar was. Landed, no problem. He goes to the rental car desk and says, I need a car. And they say, we just rented our last car to that couple before you. They were still standing there gathering their things. And he turned to them and said, where are you going? And they said, we're actually driving up to Albuquerque. He said, great. I'm going in the car with you. I'm happy to pay for the entire car, but I need to be in Albuquerque. And since you're going, I'm going with you. And he spent 5 hours in the car with a couple he didn't know. The wife was a little bit scared at first, but the husband is like, no, he's probably an okay guy. We'll be fine. And indeed, it worked out. Why? Because winners get things done. Winners find a way to make it happen. It's about determination and just not giving up, because that's what gets things done. So a special shout out to my good friend, Dr. Joe Hudak, who lived that story and then was having a great time sharing it with all of us when he did get to the seminar, as winners do. And now, my friends, I'm excited to share with you the number one thing that a full 50% of the successful people that I spoke to listed as one of their 3 keys of success. So this ranks pretty high that, you know what, if you want to be successful, you got to be doing this. But it's not a do. In success philosophy, we talk about the be, do, have. It's who you be. You know, it's not, well, when I have $1 million, then I'll do the things that millionaires do, so I'll be a millionaire, using money as an example in that. Because yes, it's true, most of the world thinks that it's the do, be, have philosophy, but it's not. It's the be, do, have. You have to be this first. And then you do the things that those people do, and you have the things that those people have. And if you say, but I don't know how to be that, well, that's okay. Then start with the do. Identify what you want. Do the things that those people are doing, and you learn to be that way. And then ultimately, you have the things that they have in your life, the things that you wanted to begin with. So the number one thing, the number one key to success, drum roll please, is vision or purpose or certainty, your philosophy, your goals. When you have the vision, the purpose, the goals, the certainty, and the philosophy, You're unstoppable. You have this vision of what it is you want to create. You know you want to create it, and you've decided that you are unstoppable because once you have the vision and you're willing to roll up the sleeves and do the work, you become unstoppable. I'll go back and use the example of Elon Musk again. The man is obsessed with the idea that humanity needs to be on multiple planets for the long-term success of our species. And I'm not speaking to whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, whether it's true or false. That is simply his idea. And lo and behold, with that mission, the man created his own rocket company to propel humanity further out into space than we've ever gone. Again, agree or disagree, that's totally up to you. But you cannot argue with having that mission, that vision, that purpose, and being willing to roll up your sleeves, do whatever it takes to get that done. And who does that? A person who has built themselves to be the best person they can be with strong headspace. And as doctors, we care, we have intention, we provide great service. Along the way, we find coaches and mentors to help us with that mission. And then as doctors, we need to be curious and learners. We need to build our team in the office. We need to be masters of communication. Make sure you have the right people in your life, like a loving spouse or significant other, and other people you spend time with. And as you're running this business, yes, you have to know the statistics of the business, and the statistics run the way they run because of everything we've talked about and the systems and procedures that you do in your office. My deepest wish is for a year and a career full of huge successes and wins for each one of you, everyone who listens to this podcast. And as we begin the new season of the podcast, Resources for Success, I'll be sharing with you interviews and conversations that I've had with people who support us and our business endeavors to provide great chiropractic care to as many people as possible. So stay tuned. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.